Hey everyone, welcome to the end of Unit 3 retake review video. Like I said in class, if you don't do any of this review, I'm not going to let you retake this test because there's no point in retaking something that you have not restudied for. And some of us really do need to learn how to study for a math test. Easiest way to study for a math test is make sure you understand every little tiny bit, ins and outs of a problem on the review. So I'm going to start off with complex numbers. And we're going to fill in the powers of I. So I to the first power just stays I squared is -1, I to the third power is -I, and I to the fourth power is 1. All of the other powers of I can be repeated in this pattern. For example, if I wanted to find I to the 15th, it follows this pattern of 4, so it would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. We end up with I to the third because 4 goes into 15 3 times with a remainder of 3. So it goes in 3 full times, and then the remainder is where you end up afterwards. So that would be just -I. I to the 21st means I'm going to do 5 of these. That gives me 20, and then I have 1 left over, so it's just I. I to the power of 34 does 8 of these patterns because 4 times 8 is 32, and then I have 33, 34. So 2 left over, and I squared is -1. And then before I move on to the next section, I'm going to box this one because it is the most important power of I, and is going to make a difference in some of these answers because, first of all, pay attention to what's in between the parentheses, whether or not there's a plus sign, a minus sign, or nothing at all. Nothing at all is actually multiplication. And after you're done, you have to turn all I squareds into -1 because that's what they equal. Since I squared has an actual value, we don't just leave it as I squared. So I'm going to do this one right here, 5, 2, and 4. Okay. The reason why I'm picking 5 is it has both addition and subtraction. Here's how this works. I'm going to do 2 plus 3 minus 5 because those are my regular numbers without an I. 2 plus 3 is 5, minus 5 is actually 0. And then I do the same thing but for my i's. 5i plus -2i is 3i, minus I is 2i. So again, 2 plus 3 minus 5 is 0. 5 plus -2 is 3i. 3i minus I is 2i. We don't need the 0 there, so I'm just going to box the 2i as my answer. If there is nothing in between, that means you need to distribute or FOIL. So 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times -4i is -8i. 3i times 5 is 15i. And 3i times -4i is -12. And then I times I actually makes I squared. I squared is -1. So this becomes -12 times -1. And that's really just positive 12. And now I need to combine my like terms. 10 plus 12 is 22. -8i plus 15i is 7i. On the test, it will say to simplify each expression and put your answer in the form a plus bi. That just means the real part goes first, the part without an I, and then you put the i's afterwards. Notice how I squared isn't part of that answer. That's your sign to get rid of it by making it -1. Okay, and then the reason why I picked this last one is because when you square something, you're really just multiplying it by itself. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times negative 3i is negative 15i. Negative 3i times 5 is negative 15i. And negative 3i times negative 3i. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. I times I is I squared. Then this is going to become negative 9 because the I squared becomes negative 1. Negative 1 times 9 is negative 9. And 25 minus 9 is 16. Negative 15 plus negative 15 is negative 30i. Okay, I'm just going to mention something about the others. Here, you add these two, add these two. This one, you're just subtracting instead of adding. 9 minus 2, 5i minus negative 6i. Be careful because that negative minus turns into a plus 6i. This one's just regular foiling. I'll give you a hint that the ones in the middle cross out. So this is just going to be a number without an I next to it, like that almost. If there is a number in front of the parentheses, you must distribute that and then add these like terms afterwards. Okay, distribute the 7, distribute the 2, and then combine like terms. And that's it for complex numbers. I'm going to do square root method in this video, and then I'll make a separate video for the others. Okay, for square root method, you must isolate the squared first. Here's what that means. If it is in parentheses, you need to get this all by itself, which on this one, guess what? It already is. Then you, as a hint, look at the directions, square root. Because when you square root, the squared and the square root cancel. And that side is now just x minus 2. You don't need the parentheses, you don't need the squared. Now, let's talk about the square root of negative 36. First of all, whenever you square root, you have to put a plus minus. The square root of 36 is 6. But the square root of negative 36 is 6i. Then you've got to add that 2 over to the other side because we want to solve for x so that it's all the way by itself. Now, there's nowhere really to add that 2 other than to just put it in front of the plus minus sign. Or you could write it as plus or minus 6i plus 2 afterwards. Either one of those answers would be fine. You don't need both of them, but just pick one. Okay, on the next one, this is not by itself. So I'm going to subtract 48 to the other side. And then I want to get rid of the 2. I don't want to distribute the 2. I want to divide by 2 to just completely eliminate it. And I get x plus 3 squared equals negative 24. Then I square root both sides, and I get x plus 3 equals plus minus. Now, the square root of negative 24. The square root of 24 doesn't exist. So what I do is I find two numbers that multiply to 24, like 4 times 6, that I can actually do the square root of. The square root of 4 is 2. There is no square root of 6, so it stays. But notice how since I did the square root of 4, it got to come outside. Don't forget the I, because there was a negative inside of that square root, so it means there's an I at the end. And then I've got to subtract this 3 over to the other side. So my final answer is going to be the plus or minus 2i, or 2 square roots of 6i. Sorry, I meant to write it like that. Minus 3. And that's your final answer. Okay, that leaves this last one for you guys to try on your own.